The world produces enough food to feed everyone. Our agricultural advancements and technological innovations have made it possible to harvest vast quantities of food, enough to nourish every person on the planet, yet millions go hungry every day. Despite the abundance, the distribution of food remains deeply flawed, leaving many without access to the nutrition they need. This stark contrast between abundance and scarcity raises a fundamental ethical question. How can we live in a world where so much food is wasted while so many people suffer from hunger? How can we justify so much waste while our fellow human beings struggle to survive? The sight of discarded food in landfills is a painful reminder of our collective failure. Images of overflowing landfills stand in stark contrast to the gaunt faces of starving children. This visual disparity is a powerful indictment of our global priorities. This juxtaposition highlights the deep moral crisis at the heart of our global food system. It forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about our values and choices. It compels us to examine our responsibilities and seek a more just and equitable way forward. Community efforts and grassroots movements are crucial in addressing these disparities. The sheer scale of food waste is staggering. Every year, billions of tons of food are discarded, enough to feed millions of hungry people. Developed nations discard edible food at alarming rates. Supermarkets, restaurants, and households all contribute to this massive waste. This waste occurs throughout the supply chain, from farm to supermarket to our own refrigerators. Each stage of the process sees significant losses. At the same time, millions lack access to the basic nutrition needed to survive, let alone thrive. This disparity is a glaring injustice. Children suffer from stunting and malnutrition, their futures jeopardized by a lack of this basic necessity. The long-term impacts on their health and development are profound. This reality demands our attention and compels us to act. We must support initiatives that aim to reduce waste and improve food distribution. This is not merely an economic or logistical issue, it is a moral one. Our choices reflect our values and our commitment to justice. When we live in a world where we can feed everyone, allowing people to go hungry becomes a matter of choice. It is a choice that we must collectively reject. We must confront the uncomfortable truth that our current food system prioritizes profit over people. This profit-driven approach exacerbates the problem. It often values convenience over compassion, leading to a world where abundance coexists with deprivation. This is a systemic issue that requires systemic solutions. This is a reality we cannot ignore. We must take collective action to create a more equitable and sustainable food system for all. Is access to nutritious food a right or a privilege? This question is more than just a philosophical debate. It has real-world implications for millions of people around the globe. This question is central to the ethical debate surrounding food distribution. How we answer it can shape policies, influence economies, and determine the quality of life for countless individuals. From a utilitarian perspective, ensuring everyone has enough to eat maximizes overall well-being. The idea is to create the greatest good for the greatest number of people. A well-nourished population is a productive population, contributing to a stronger society for all. When people are healthy and well-fed, they can work, learn, and thrive. Therefore, a utilitarian approach would advocate for policies and systems that minimize waste and prioritize equitable food distribution. This means not only producing enough food but also ensuring it reaches those in need. Human rights perspectives argue that food, as a basic need for survival, is an inherent right. This view holds that every person, regardless of their circumstances, deserves access to adequate nutrition. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights recognizes the right to an adequate standard of living, which includes access to food. This international document underscores the importance of food security as a fundamental human right. Denying someone food is akin to denying them their basic human dignity and right to life. It is a moral failure that reflects poorly on society as a whole. This perspective emphasizes the moral imperative to ensure everyone has access to this fundamental need, regardless of their economic or social standing. It calls for a collective effort to address food insecurity. Libertarian viewpoints, however, often frame food access as a matter of individual responsibility rather than a collective obligation. They stress personal freedom and self-reliance. They argue that individuals should be free to make their own choices about food production and consumption. This includes the freedom to succeed or fail based on one's own efforts. Government intervention in these matters, they contend, infringes upon personal liberty and market forces. They believe that free markets are the best way to allocate resources efficiently. This perspective emphasizes individual freedom, and often opposes large-scale redistribution programs as a solution to food insecurity. They argue that such programs can create dependency and stifle innovation. Each of these ethical frameworks offers valuable insights into the complexities of food distribution. They highlight different aspects of the issue, from moral obligations to practical considerations. Finding a balance between individual freedom and collective responsibility is crucial. It requires thoughtful dialogue and innovative solutions that respect both personal liberties and the common good. We must recognize the inherent dignity of every human being and strive to create a world where access to nutritious food is a guaranteed right, not a privilege reserved for the few. This vision calls for a united effort to ensure that no one goes hungry. Food inequality is not a natural phenomenon. It is rooted in systemic issues that perpetuate disparities in access and affordability. These disparities are often invisible to those who are not directly affected, but they have profound impacts on millions of lives. Global trade policies often disadvantage developing countries, making it difficult for them to compete in the global market. These policies are designed in ways that favor wealthier nations, creating an uneven playing field. These policies can lead to an over-reliance on food imports, making nations vulnerable to price shocks and shortages. When global supply chains are disrupted, the consequences are felt most acutely by those who are already struggling. Corporate control over food production and distribution also contributes to inequality. Large corporations often dominate the market, pushing out smaller local producers. Large multinational corporations often prioritize profit maximization over ethical considerations. This focus on profit can lead to decisions that harm local communities and ecosystems. This can lead to exploitative labor practices, environmental degradation, and a focus on producing cash crops for export rather than staple foods for local populations. The emphasis on cash crops can undermine food security in the regions where they are grown. The legacies of colonialism continue to cast a long shadow on food systems in many parts of the world. Colonial powers often established agricultural systems that prioritized export over local needs. Land grabs and exploitative agricultural practices implemented during colonial eras continue to impact food production and distribution today. These practices have led to the displacement of local communities and the loss of traditional farming knowledge. These historical injustices have created lasting inequalities that require targeted interventions to dismantle. Addressing these issues is essential for creating a fairer and more equitable food system. Furthermore, climate change is exacerbating existing inequalities. The impacts of climate change are not felt equally. They disproportionately affect those who are least able to adapt. Droughts, floods, and other extreme weather events disproportionately impact agricultural yields in vulnerable regions. These events can devastate crops, leading to food shortages and higher prices. This leads to increased food insecurity and displacement, further marginalizing already disadvantaged communities. The cycle of poverty and food insecurity is perpetuated by these ongoing challenges. Addressing food inequality requires confronting these systemic issues head-on. It involves rethinking trade policies, corporate practices, and historical injustices to create a more just and sustainable food system for all.